talking about my favorite book, Pride and Prejudice. Author is Jane Austen. She born in December in 1775 in England. She published several books in her lifetime. The best known are Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, Emma, Persuasion, and the others. The family belonged to the agrarian bourgeoisie, constant of most in her novels, and she is considered a writer with modern thoughts. Austen criticized the lack of education that women have, and in her novel she showed a woman with a critical thoughts as well as Elizabeth Bennet. I love this author because in her novels, the protagonists are independent, determined, brave women who are willing to defend their beliefs. The main characters are Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. Elizabeth Bennet, she is intelligent, kind, lovely, smiling, cheerful, independent. And Mr. Darcy is intelligent, prompt, lovely, kind, cultural, polite, um, arrogant, behaved, um, selfish. Um, Elizabeth and Darcy are the protagonists of the novel. For me, she looks like this, and Mr. Darcy, he looks like this. The secondary characters are Jane Bennet, Mr. Bingley, Mr. and Miss Bennet, Mary, Lydia, and Kitty Bennet, Mr. Wickham, Mr. Collins, Charlotte Lucas, Georgina Darcy, Miss and Mr. Grandier, and Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Jane Bennet is the Jane is a close to Lizzie, and Mr. Bingley, he is the best friend of Darcy. Mr. Wickham, he defamed Mr. Darcy, and Mr. Collins, he is the cousin of the family Bennet. Charlotte Lucas is the best friend of Elizabeth. Georgina Darcy, she is a sister of Darcy. And Lady Catherine de Bourgh, she is the Darcy uncles. She want to separate Elizabeth and Darcy. Mr. Wickham and Lady Catherine de Bourgh are the antagonists of the novel. Pride and Prejudice is set in a rural England and the turn of 19th century, and mention places like Longwood, resident of the Bennets, Netherfield, resident of the Bingley, Pemberley, resident of the Mr. Darcy, Kent, Rosing, Huddersfield, and London. London is an important city in the story. It all started when the Bennet family is invited to a dance at Lucas family house. There meet a Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy. At first, Elizabeth and Darcy didn't like each other because Lizzie had heard that he said she isn't so pretty to entertainment that made Lizzie begin to have a bad image of him as someone proud and arrogant. Instead, for Jane and Bingley, they would have fallen in love on the first scene. After a week, Bingley organized a dance and invited the Bennet family. Then they meet Mr. Collins, who was the cousin and heir to the Bennett's properties. Then the sis- the when then the Bennett sisters went out for a walk in Meriton, and they meet officers and meet Mr. Wilhelm. Um, he was very friendly and became close to Lizzie, and he told her that he had grown up with Mr. Darcy, and as they grew up, Darcy had become very arrogant and selfish, causing misfortune to Mr. Weha. After several weeks, the day of the Neverfield Park dance arrived. Lizzie was excited to see Mr. Wehan again, but after finding out that he wasn't going to attend, she became very sad. And the dance, Darcy observed that Jane didn't show feelings to Bingley, so he supposed she wasn't the right person. And after the dance, he told him that it was better is if he forgot her, and they went to London. So the next day they left Netherfield Park, and James was very depressed because he left Netherfield, and she decided to go London. Lizzie instead um, have revised a marriage proposal from Mr. Collins, and she rejected him. After a few days, Charlotte told her that she was going to marry him, and Lizzie was very surprised and say nothing. From several months passed, and she decided to visit her friend Charlotte in Rosin. And she met Darcy again, and she found out about the plan that Mr. Darcy put together uh, to separate her sister from Bingley. But one day, Darcy proposed to her, to Lizzie, and she was very surprised and rejected him. First, for having separated her sister, and then because Mr. Wickham in misfortunes. Darcy was very hard, so decided to leave and wrote a letters for she telling his story. After 3 months, Bingley returns the Netherfield and goes straight to the Bennet house, and he proposed to Jane. Lizzie and Darcy talk about what happened last time, and they forgive each other. And again, Darcy proposed to her, and she accepted. At the end of the story, they were waiting the invitation for the wedding. End of the story, I think they were probably making preparation for their wedding. I would like it to have a sequel of the book and see how they are together. I love this couple. I would like find a Mr. Darcy too. The authors try to say many things, among them you always have to